All right, so future of data in 10 minutes. Let's see if I can do it. We're going to start with Google in the year, oh, the timer's not going yet. I just got,
some extra time.
That's awesome. I'm not going to use it, but that's fine. All right, so in the year 2000, Google had a huge announcement. This is telling for a couple reasons, but one is because Google indexed the entire internet. That was a huge accomplishment that they made. They made a huge press release around it, and they said they had accomplished it, that their index was over 1 billion URLs. Right, huge accomplishment. Fast forward to 2008, and they made another big PR push. They'd hit another milestone that they had now indexed 1 trillion URLs. And they were increasing several million URLs, so the entire internet from 8 years later, several times a day. If you graph that out, the data growth looks like our profits, right? So start tweeting. That was good, like half of you. All right. Right, and it's exponential data growth is what that is. And it's you know, they haven't announced again that they've hit, I don't know what's after a trillion, because I've never seen that much, but I mean, it's a quadrillion. It's not a number. But anyway, there's a huge amount of data being created. And so the challenge is, what are we going to do with all this data? And so I wanted to go through a brief, incomplete, and mostly inaccurate history of data, but I've only got 10 minutes, so deal with me. All right, so we're going to start with around the year 2000. We were using relational databases for everything. There were really no alternatives, and sometimes we were using them for what they were designed for. A lot of times we were shoehorning things that didn't belong in relational databases. I'm seeing nods around the room, which means you must have been coder sometime in the early 2000s, and you recognize that they became a crutch, and we depended heavily on them. In fact, in the early 2000s, we built a tool to make our dependency even more important, which we as a community built Memcache, which increased our dependency on relational databases. It was like a scooter. It still had all the limitations. In fact, it added new limitations, but it was faster. And so limited by our tools, we made products that took data and made it look better. Right? And if you think about like Google Analytics, it doesn't do anything. It just takes raw data, makes it look pretty and digestible, and gives it to you. Right? And this is kind of representative of a lot of the products of the era. Around 2007, the crutches began to snap. And there were a lot of factors that went into that. One of them was the social graph emergence. Social data, like found on Facebook and Twitter, just worked in so different ways than what we were used to. Substantial data growth. Flexible and rich data structures were needed. We were breaking out of the mold of needing the 2 dimensions of a relational database. And open source tools emerged. Right, and these are generally considered part of the NoSQL movement. So previously, Google and Amazon had built their own non-relational databases, right, with Bigtable and Dynamo. But they were the only ones who could afford to do it. There were no open source tools available, and so around 2007, they started emerging. And so these tools are, you know, to follow the metaphor, MongoDB, Hadoop, et cetera, they're really an empowering exoskeleton. They don't limit us, but they enable us to do more things than we could before. And so as we have these new tools in place, we built products with them. And the products built with these new data tools largely resembled earlier products. So the crutch was gone, but we kept building products like it was there. And anyone recognize this interface? Chartbeat. Right? Chartbeat did some amazing things. It changed it to real time. Right? It removed the shackles of having to wait 24 hours. You guys must be from Chartbeat? Or are you just big fans? Yeah, anyway. So, because you know, most analytics platforms, you had to wait a day. Theirs was real time. You could look and see exactly what was happening on your site today. But if you think about it, although it was faster and that enabled people, at the end of the day, it was still just a pretty interface over raw data. Yes, we got it sooner, but it wasn't doing a lot for us as far as with that data. And so the data tools today are vastly more powerful, and the tools are built to help us make sense of our data. All right, so your data is telling you things, and my challenge is, are you listening? All right, so right now we need to build products that do more than just report things. We need products that inform, that educate, and that reveal. And I want to bring up a few examples of things doing this today. So is anyone familiar, it's totally whitewashed out, but is anyone familiar with Google's Now? Right? This is amazing, right? Some of the features I like a lot about it that are kind of scary sometimes is it'll cross-reference things. So if you're using, it looks at your calendar, it looks at traffic patterns and Google Maps and mashes them together. So if I have an appointment uptown, it'll come up with an alert saying, not like everyone else has one, in 15 minutes you have an appointment. Theirs says, you have to leave in 5 minutes if you want to get there in time because the bridge is backed up and you need to, allot extra time for that, right? So it's combining a bunch of things and give me what I need to know now. Or if you walk into an airport and you've already checked in with your flight, it'll automatically bring up like the barcode thing because it knows where you are and it knows that that's why you're there. So you can do it, right? So it's doing more for you than just presenting raw data, right? Another Google example. This is an email I got in the last month. It says, so I'll read it to you. It's kind of hard. It says, this is called Google Analytics Intelligence. It says, Dear Google Analytics user, the custom alerts you requested from Analytics Intelligence are listed in the table below. To see more details, log in. And if you look at the information it's saying my blog's traffic is high. Right? This is intelligence. Right? Does anyone find this completely lacking in intelligence? So what if it did something like this? The email instead said, Steve, your website currently has higher than usual traffic. Most of the visitors are coming from a blog post on Lifehacker, which links to your Vim page. There's quite a conversation happening there, so you might want to participate. Additionally, the conversation seems to have spilled over onto Twitter. Right? Infinitely more valuable than the other email that you're getting, and completely accessible. In fact, you could do this today. They have all the data available. Bitly has a lot of this data, right, that you could access and do. So another example using Google Analytics that does not happen today but could is what if they told you not that searches that landed on your page, but what your visitors were actually doing. So what if people said, what if they said if all the people that went to MongoDB.org, 4% went to DataStax, it's one of our competitors, 20% visited Amazon Web Services, and 10% searched for cloud hosting. Right? It's a lot of great information that would really benefit us as we're making decisions. It's not necessarily our analytics, but it tells us more about our users and what they're doing. And so the key is it's about making connections so your users don't have to. So I want to tell one more example of another company doing this, or it's not a company, it's the city of Chicago. Anyone from Chicago? One guy, all right. All right, so your city does amazing things. We're like food or a lot of other things, that's New York's territory. But for data, the city of Chicago has an amazing data team, and they open a lot of this data through public APIs. And this is on the project they've been working on for a few years. Last year, they decided to build a component of it called Windy Grid. And what Windy Grid does is they start off with the challenge, how can we use real-time data to make better decisions? Right, so they have all this data coming in. They say, that's their challenge. How can they do that? And so what their goals were, all right, first we're going to bring all the data in one place. We're going to make it available in real time. And we're going to find relationships in the data. And they used all the data they could. And so the data they used together, they're using 911 data, 411 data. They're using every time that a fire is called. They're using every time police are dispatched, all the police reports for where things happened. And everything's geocoded. Right? So they know where the phone calls are occurring. They know where people are being deployed to as far as the staff. They're looking at things for where bike storage is, right? Where bike racks. They're looking at sidewalks. They're looking at Twitter. They're looking at Flickr. And they're looking at all of this, and they're mashing it up in one location. Right? And what they're trying to do is find relationships in the data. And so what they do is they've built this. It overlays all onto a map. And the map, you can overlay different points and move them over time, which is really hard to show in a picture, but bear with me. It's pretty amazing. You can see a lot of tweets happen in this area around a certain time. And you can see that over time, more and more violent crimes are happening in this neighborhood. And this data is enabling them to be more responsive so that they're able to make assessments of things. They know if more violent crimes are happening in this neighborhood than usually do, something's happening, and they dispatch investigators to come in and try and determine what's happening. They also look, like Twitter, if a lot of people are tweeting in an area, they're looking at what happened. And they're trying to analyze those tweets as well to see if people are thrilled because someone just won a big sports, you know, the Cubs won the World Series. We know that's not happening, right? But the Bulls maybe, not anytime soon. You guys are not doing well for sports, all right? And so the future for them is they're using it to use predictive analytics, natural language processing, machine learning. They're going to incorporate all these things into it so that they're able to make Chicago more responsive. Just so you know, New York is not second to none, but here we are. But the mayor is very interested in using this here. And the city of Chicago is happy to license their technology out. They've also open source parts of it, but it's pretty amazing stuff what they're able to do. And I will say it's built on MongoDB, which I think is one of the coolest things about building a database is seeing how we enable people to build amazing things. And this is, I think, an amazing thing. So these modern tools like Redis, Hadoop, MongoDB, Storm, Spark, Ruby, R, Go, Python, these tools empower you. And so what are you going to do with it? What are you going to do with your data? And that's my presentation. So.